She's not family. A Florida inheritance story. The humid Florida air pressed against my skin like a wet blanket as I stood outside St. Mary's Catholic Church in Tampa. August in Florida was brutal, but today felt especially suffocating. Grandmother Elena's funeral was about to begin, and I could already feel the sweat forming under my black dress. The Spanish moss hanging from the old oak trees seemed to droop even lower than usual, as if the whole city was mourning with us. I adjusted my purse strap and took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I hadn't seen most of my family in 2 years, not since the big fight at Christmas dinner. But Grandmother Elena had been different. She was the one who always called me on my birthday, who sent care packages when I was struggling through college, who never made me feel like an outsider, even when everyone else did. My phone buzzed, a text from my roommate Jessica. "How are you holding up? Remember what we talked about. You belong there as much as anyone else." I smiled sadly and slipped the phone back into my purse. Jessica was right, but it didn't make walking through those church doors any easier. The heavy wooden doors creaked as I pushed them open. The cool air conditioning hit my face, and I immediately spotted them. The Torres family had claimed the first 3 rows on the left side, just like they always did for weddings, baptisms, and now funerals. Aunt Carmen was already dabbing her eyes with a tissue, her perfectly styled black hair not moving despite the dramatics. Uncle Miguel stood stiffly in his best suit, the one he only wore for court appearances and family events. Then I saw my cousin David, the golden boy, dressed in an expensive black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He worked for some tech company in Miami now, drove a BMW, and lived in one of those glass condos, overlooking Biscayne Bay. Next to him sat his wife Sarah, blonde and polished, looking like she stepped out of a country club magazine. I walked slowly down the aisle, my heels clicking against the marble floor. A few distant relatives nodded at me politely, but I could feel the tension in the air. It was always the same with this family. I was Elena's granddaughter, but I was also the reminder of the family's biggest shame. My mother had been Elena's youngest daughter, Maria. She got pregnant with me at 17 and never told anyone who my father was. The family whispered about it for years. Was it the boy from her high school? The older man she cleaned houses for? No one knew, and my mother took that secret to her grave when she died in a car accident when I was 12. That's when I went to live with grandmother Elena. She never made me feel unwanted, never treated me like a burden. But the rest of the family, they saw me as the girl with no real father, no clear place in the family tree. The reminder of Maria's mistake. I slid into a pew near the back, behind a family I didn't recognize. They were probably neighbors or friends from Elena's church group. The funeral director was setting up near the altar, and I could see Elena's casket covered in white roses, her favorite flowers. "Excuse me." A woman's voice made me look up. It was Rodriguez, Elena's next-door neighbor for 30 years. "You must be Sophia. Elena talked about you all the time. She was so proud of you finishing nursing school." "Thank you," I whispered, feeling my throat tighten. She was proud of everyone. Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed my shoulder. "Not everyone, Mia. She talked about you differently. You were special to her." Before I could respond, Aunt Carmen's voice cut through the quiet church like a blade. She was talking to someone near the front, but her voice was loud enough for half the church to hear. "I just think it's important that people understand who the real family is," Carmen was saying to another woman I didn't recognize. Elena was generous to everyone, but blood is blood. You know, some people might try to take advantage of an old woman's kindness. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. I stared down at my hands, wishing I could disappear into the wooden pew. The service began, and Father Martinez spoke about Elena's life, her dedication to her church, her family, her community. He talked about her work as a seamstress, how she raised 4 children after her husband died young, how she never turned away anyone who needed help. David gave the first eulogy. He talked about childhood memories, summer visits to grandmother Elena's house, her famous arroz con pollo that brought the whole family together. His voice cracked with emotion as he described her as the heart of our family, the woman who kept us all connected. Aunt Carmen spoke next, talking about her mother's strength, her faith, her unwavering love for her family. She gave everything she had to make sure her children and grandchildren had better lives than she did. She was the foundation that held this family together. I noticed she kept saying her children and grandchildren, but never mentioned me specifically. It was like I was invisible, a ghost in the back of the church. Uncle Miguel's eulogy was shorter but equally painful. He talked about Elena's wisdom, her guidance during difficult times, her pride in watching her family succeed. Again, no mention of me, no acknowledgement that I even existed. When they asked if anyone else wanted to speak, I felt a pull in my chest. I had so many memories of Elena, so many things I wanted to say, but I also felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes, many of them belonging to people who saw me as an outsider. I stayed in my seat. After the service, we drove in a slow procession to the cemetery. The sun was blazing now, and the humidity made everyone's makeup run and suits stick to their skin. Elena was being buried next to her husband in a small Catholic cemetery on the outskirts of Tampa, surrounded by palm trees and the distant sound of traffic on interstate. At the graveside, I stood toward the back of the crowd. The priest said his final prayers, and one by one, family members tossed roses onto the casket as it was lowered into the ground. When it was my turn, I walked forward and dropped a single white rose, whispering, "Thank you for everything, Abuela." As I walked back, I heard Carmen talking to her sister-in-law, Rose. "It's just so sad how some people try to insert themselves into situations where they don't belong," Carmen said, looking directly at me. "Family means something. Real family." Rosa nodded sympathetically. Elena was always too generous for her own good. I felt like I'd been slapped. My face burned with shame and anger. But I kept walking. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. After the burial, everyone was invited back to Elena's house for a reception. The little yellow house on Cypress Street where I'd lived from age 12 to 18. Where Elena taught me to cook and helped me with homework and listened to all my teenage problems. The house was packed with people. Elena's church friends had prepared food. Cuban sandwiches, black beans and rice, platanos maduros, flan. The smell reminded me of every holiday I'd spent in this house. Every ordinary Tuesday when Elena would surprise me with my favorite meal just because she loved me. I found a quiet corner in the kitchen and helped serve food, trying to stay useful and out of the way. That's when I overheard Carmen talking to a group of relatives I barely recognized. "The thing is," Carmen said, lowering her voice but not enough, "Elena never legally adopted Sofia. She took her in after Maria died, but there was never any official paperwork. So technically, she's not really family. Not in the eyes of the law." "What does that mean for the will?" asked one of the relatives. Carmen shrugged. "It means the house and Elena's savings will go to her actual children and grandchildren, the people who have a real legal claim. It's just the way these things work." I dropped the serving spoon I was holding. It clattered against the counter, and several people turned to look at me. I mumbled an apology and bent to pick it up, my hands shaking. I hadn't even thought about the will. I wasn't expecting anything. Elena had already given me so much by raising me, by loving me when no one else would. But hearing Carmen talk about me like I was some kind of intruder, some stranger who had no right to be there, it cut deeper than I expected. I excused myself and went to Elena's bedroom, needing a moment alone. The room still smelled like her perfume. White shoulders, the same scent she'd worn for as long as I could remember. Her jewelry box sat on the dresser, the one with the tiny ballerina that spun when you opened it. I used to play with it as a child, mesmerized by the little dancer in her pink tutu. On her nightstand was a framed photo of the two of us, from my high school graduation. I was wearing my cap and gown, and Elena's face was beaming with pride. She'd worked extra hours as a seamstress to help pay for my graduation dress. "Mija," she'd said that day, "education is the one thing no one can take away from you." I picked up the photo and held it against my chest, finally letting the tears come. I'd lost the only person who ever made me feel like I truly belonged somewhere. A knock on the door made me wipe my eyes quickly. "Come in," I called softly. It was Mrs. Rodriguez. "I was looking for you, Mija." There are some people here I want you to meet. She led me back to the living room, where a small group of Elena's church friends had gathered. They welcomed me warmly, sharing their own memories of Elena, telling me stories I'd never heard before. For the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe. Your grandmother talked about you all the time, said Mrs. Santos, an elderly woman who'd known Elena for decades. She was so proud when you became a nurse. She said you got that caring spirit from her. She always said you were her angel, added another woman, especially after you helped take care of her these past few years. It was true. After I graduated nursing school and got a job at Tampa General Hospital, I'd been visiting Elena almost every day. When she got sick last winter with pneumonia, I'd taken time off work to help care for her. I'd driven her to doctor appointments, organized her medications, made sure she was eating properly, but apparently that didn't matter to the rest of the family. As the afternoon wore on, people began to leave. The house slowly emptied until only the immediate family remained. Carmen, Miguel, David, Sarah, and a few other cousins I barely knew. And me. That's when Mr. Peterson arrived. He was a tall, thin man in his 60s, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a conservative suit despite the heat. Carmen seemed surprised to see him. Mr. Peterson? I thought we were meeting at your office tomorrow morning. Elena specifically requested that the will be read today, immediately after the reception, he replied. She was very clear about this. Carmen looked confused. But I mean, surely the immediate family should handle these matters privately. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses. Elena's instructions were very specific. She wanted all beneficiaries present for the reading. I started to stand up, assuming this was my cue to leave, but Miss Peterson held up a hand. Actually, Miss Restrepo, you need to stay. You're mentioned in the will. The room fell silent. Carmen's face went pale, and David looked completely confused. Uncle Miguel cleared his throat uncomfortably. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake, Carmen said. Sophia isn't legally part of the family. She was never adopted. Mr. Peterson opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. Elena Torres was very clear about her wishes, and Sofia Restrepo is indeed mentioned multiple times in this will. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I stayed in my chair, trying to make myself as small as possible. Let's begin, Mr. Peterson said, putting on his reading glasses. This is the last will and testament of Elena Maria Torres, dated 6 months ago. He cleared his throat and began to read. The legal language was formal and difficult to follow, but I could understand the basic structure. Elena was leaving specific items to different family members. To my son Miguel Torres, I leave my dining room set and china collection, as well as my savings account ending in 4729, containing approximately $15,000. Miguel nodded solemnly. To my daughter Carmen Rodriguez, I leave my jewelry collection, excluding specific items mentioned later in this document, as well as my savings account ending in 8045, containing approximately $12,000. Carmen looked satisfied, though I noticed she was listening carefully for what came next. To my grandson David Torres, I leave my 1998 Toyota Camry and my collection of family photographs, as well as a cash bequest of $8,000. David smiled sadly. She always said I should have those photos to remember everyone. Mr. Peterson continued reading through smaller bequests to various relatives and friends. Carmen was given Elena's wedding ring. Miguel got his father's old watch. David received some family furniture he'd always admired. Then Mr. Peterson paused and looked directly at me. And now we come to the primary beneficiary, he said. Primary beneficiary? My stomach dropped. There had to be some mistake. To Sofia Maria Restrepo, who has been more of a daughter to me than a granddaughter, who cared for me in sickness and health, who never asked for anything but gave me everything. I leave the following. The room was completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic outside. First, to Sophia, I leave my house at 12047 Cypress Street, including all furniture, appliances, and personal belongings not specifically mentioned elsewhere in this document. I felt the blood drain from my face. Carmen gasped audibly. Second, to Sophia I leave the entirety of my checking account ending in 2156, containing approximately $43,000. Now David was staring at me with his mouth open. Third, to Sophia I leave my life insurance policy, with a beneficiary payout of $75,000. Carmen stood up abruptly. This can't be legal. She's not family. She has no legal claim to any of this. Mr. Peterson looked at her calmly. Mrs. Rodriguez, Elena Torres, was of sound mind. When she made this will, she had every right to leave her property to whomever she chose. The fact that Sophia was never formally adopted is irrelevant to Elena's right to designate her as a beneficiary. But this is ridiculous, Carmen sputtered. She's not blood. She's not real family. With all due respect, Miss Rodriguez, that's not how inheritance law works in Florida. Mr. Peterson replied. Elena was very clear about her wishes, and this will has been properly witnessed and notarized. I was in complete shock. I couldn't process what I was hearing. The house where I'd grown up, where Elena and I had shared so many memories, was mine, and more money than I'd ever seen in my life. But the reactions around the room told me this was real. Carmen's face had gone from pale to bright red. Miguel was staring at his hand. David looked like someone had hit him with a brick. There's more, Mr. Peterson said, and I thought I might faint. Elena also established a small trust fund for Sophia's future children, should she have any, with an initial deposit of $20,000, and she has left Sophia her engagement ring from her late husband, which she specifically requested be given to Sophia when she finds someone worthy of her love. Carmen finally found her voice again. This is insane. Elena was old. She was probably confused. Someone must have influenced her. This girl probably manipulated her. I finally spoke up, my voice barely a whisper. I never asked her for anything. I didn't even know she had a will. Of course you'd say that now, Carmen snapped. You probably spent years convincing her that you were the only one who cared about her. That's enough, Mr. Peterson said, firmly. Mrs. Rodriguez, if you wish to contest this will, you have every right to do so through the proper legal channels. However, I should warn you that Elena anticipated this possibility. He pulled out another document. She specifically included a clause stating that anyone who contests this will for reasons related to Sophia's legal status in the family will forfeit their own inheritance entirely. She was very clear that she would not tolerate any challenge to Sophia's right to inherit. The room fell silent again. I could see Carmen calculating in her head. Was it worth losing her $12,000 and Elena's jewelry to fight this? Apparently not. Uncle Miguel cleared his throat. Well, I guess congratulations are in order. So his tone was strained, but at least he was trying to be civil. David, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to disappear. Sarah was whispering urgently in his ear. Mr. Peterson handed me a thick envelope. Sophia, these are all your documents. The house deed will need to be transferred officially, but Elena prepaid all the legal fees for that process. The bank accounts will be accessible to you within a few business days. The life insurance will take a bit longer to process, but everything should be resolved within a month. I took the envelope with shaking hands. It felt impossibly heavy. I should mention, Mr. Peterson continued, that Elena left a personal letter for Sophia as well. She asked that it be given to you privately. He handed me a smaller envelope with my name written on it, in Elena's careful handwriting. I recognized it immediately. She'd taught me to write in that same precise script when I was 13. Carmen gathered her purse and stood up abruptly. Well, I suppose there's nothing more to say here. Come on, Miguel. David. As they filed toward the door, Carmen paused next to my chair. You may have fooled Elena, but the rest of us know what you really are. You're not family and you never will be. After they left, the house felt incredibly quiet. Mr. Peterson packed up his documents and handed me his business card. If you have any questions about the estate, please don't hesitate to call. Elena spoke very highly of you, Sophia. She was proud of the woman you'd become. After he left, I sat alone in Elena's living room. My living room now, holding the letter she'd written me. My hands were still shaking as I carefully opened the envelope. My dearest Sophia, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and I hope my family behaved themselves at the funeral. Knowing Carmen, probably not, but I hope you held your head high anyway. I want you to know that every decision in my will was made with careful thought and a full heart. You have been the greatest joy of my life since the day you came to live with me. I know the family has sometimes made you feel like an outsider, but you must understand, you are more my family than any of them. When Maria died, and you came to live with me, I didn't just gain a granddaughter. I gained a daughter, a companion, a reason to keep going. You brought light into my house and purpose to my days. When you chose to become a nurse, when you dedicated your life to helping others, I knew I had done something right in raising you. These past few years, when you visited me, every day, when you took care of me when I was sick, when you made sure I had everything I needed, that wasn't obligation, Misha. That was love, real love, the kind that comes from the heart, not from blood or legal document. Carmen and Miguel and David, they are good people in their own way, but they have busy lives. They visit on holidays and special occasions, and I understand that. But you, Sophia, you were there for the ordinary day. You were there when I was lonely, when I was worried, when I just needed someone to talk to. The money in the house, these are just things. What matters is that you know how much you are loved, how proud I am of you, how grateful I am that God gave me the chance to be your grandmother. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about this inheritance. You earned it not through manipulation or calculation, but through love and kindness and dedication. You took care of me when I needed it most, and now I want to take care of you. Use this money wisely. Buy yourself something beautiful. Travel somewhere you've always wanted to go. Maybe think about starting your own family someday. You would be such a wonderful mother. And remember, Misha, family isn't just about blood. It's about love, loyalty, respect. And by that definition, you are more family to me than anyone else in the world. I love you with all my heart, today and always. Your devoted abuela, Elena. I read the letter 3 times, crying harder each time. By the end, I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. But these weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of gratitude, of relief, of feeling finally and completely loved. I walked through the house slowly, seeing it with new eyes. The kitchen where Elena taught me to cook, where we sat every morning drinking café con leche and talking about my day. The living room where we watched telenovelas together, Elena explaining all the dramatic plot twists. My old bedroom, which she'd kept exactly the same as when I lived there, like a shrine to my adolescence. It was all mine now, but more than that, it was proof that I had belonged here all along. Over the next few weeks, the legal processes moved forward smoothly. The house was officially transferred to my name. The bank accounts were closed, and the money deposited into my account. The life insurance company processed the claim without any issues. Carmen tried calling me once, asking if we could work something out regarding Elena's jewelry collection. Apparently, there were some pieces she'd been hoping to inherit that had gone to me instead. I politely declined to negotiate. David sent me a text message, apologizing for his reaction at the will reading and asking if we could have coffee to clear the air. I didn't respond. Some relationships couldn't be fixed with a single conversation. A month after the funeral, I quit my job at the hospital and used part of Elena's inheritance to go back to school for my master's degree in nursing. I'd always wanted to become a nurse practitioner, but could never afford the additional education. Now I could. I also used some of the money to take a trip to Spain, something Elena had always dreamed of doing, but never could afford. I visited the small town where her parents had been born, walked the same streets, saw the same mountains. I took pictures of everything and created an album that I placed on Elena's grave when I returned. 6 months later, I met James at a coffee shop near the university. He was a teacher, kind and funny, and patient with my family baggage. When I told him about Elena's letter and the inheritance drama, he just shook his head and said, "Their loss. Anyone who couldn't see how special you are wasn't paying attention." A year after Elena's death, James proposed. I said yes, and we had a small wedding in Elena's garden, with her house as the backdrop. Mrs. Rodriguez and Elena's church friends were there, along with James's family, and some of our mutual friends. It was intimate and perfect. I wore Elena's engagement ring alongside my new wedding ring. Before the ceremony, I visited her grave and told her about James, about how happy I was, about how I finally felt like I had the family I'd always wanted. You were right, Abuela, I whispered to her headstone. Family isn't about blood, it's about love. And you taught me what that really means. As we drove away from the wedding reception that evening, James reached over and took my hand. How does it feel, Mrs. Patterson? He asked. I looked back at the little yellow house where Elena raised me, where she taught me to be strong, where she showed me that love was a choice, not an accident of genetics. The house where I learned that sometimes the family that chooses you is more real than the family you're born into. It feels like home, I said. It feels like I finally know who I am and where I belong. Carmen was right about one thing. I wasn't family in the way she understood it. I was something better. I was chosen family. I was loved family. I was family that earned its place through dedication and care and genuine affection. And Elena had made sure the whole world knew it.